Greetings, ladies and gentle monsters. I am your host, Immortal Brando, and this is actually our final podcast of the year. I'm not sure when it's going to be up though. It might be until next month, but yeah, our last podcast of the year. But anyway, um, today we're going to be talking about Clock Tower. Sorry for the bootleg intro. I did not plan for this one. And for my roundtable, I'm joined by lovely citizens of either Castle or Clock Tower. You choose. Let's start from the top. Black Shadow.
Yep, hi on. Shadow here for last month. It is officially 361 days till Christmas, so get your wrapping paper ready, get your ideas full of. Think of your loved ones.
Sweet, sweet. Unfortunately, Drill Bit, introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, it's me, Drovid. Glad to be on here. Should be interesting topic.
Awesome. Matthew Rose, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, it's Matthew Rose. Glad to be back again for another lovely podcast. Very happy to be talking about some Clock Tower this time around. Also, hope you guys had a happy Christmas.
Yes. Arkadoff, Gabe, intro right now.
Okay, so, I'm loving them Fiona cheeks. I mean, hey everybody, and this is Clock Tower Podcast. I recently played all the games and I cannot wait to talk about them.
Nice. Scared Sheep.
Hey everyone, I am the Scared Sheep. This is my first time being on the podcast, so thank you so much to everyone for having me. I really look forward to talking about Clock Tower and Haunting Ground and other games that I have been a fan of for quite a while.
Awesome. All right, so let's start off with number one. How did you get into the Clock Tower franchise in the first place? And what fascinated you about this and the Haunted Ground? Actually, I'm gonna keep mine really brief. I want to say I saw Haunted Ground inside a store, and I regrettably did not buy it all those years ago. But I came across the game again on YouTube because I was looking at Let's Plays random stuff for Halloween, and I came across Haunted Ground. Guys watching it, they're really good. So that's how I got invested into Clock Tower. Haunted Ground. Clock Tower, on the other hand, though, I just watched a cutscene compilation of 3, and I'm like, what am I watching? Is this a comedy skit?
Not exactly that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cutscenes, that'll be interesting to go into later on.
Yes.
Because there is a bit of history behind them.
My
there is.
My answer's pretty boring. I just want to go real quick on that. I got into Haunting Ground when I saw the death scenes or death animations within the game, and then I got into Clock Tower just because of this podcast. So I started playing all the games, trying to get through them in an expedient amount of time, and I really just had a lot of fun and enjoyed them. So pretty boring answer, but that's how I got into the entire series, and I don't regret it. Also, anyone else?
I was just gonna say, when I was in high school, my part-time job was at GameStop, and definitely got intrigued by the cover art for Clock Tower 3 and decided to pick it up. Why not? And just found I loved the series, went from there.
All right, who's going next?
Let's see. For me, I'm actually a subscriber to the Survival Horror Network on YouTube, and just happened to see I believe it's the first Clock Tower game pop up on their playlist. Watched through it, got very intrigued by it, and just basically binge watched the whole series, and then decided I needed to at least play the first game. Still working on the other ones, but very, very intrigued by it.
All right. Anyone else?
Probably leaves me. So yeah, for all those Syndicate super fans that are out there, obviously I've played absolutely gobs of Resident Evil across time, which means inevitably you come across the likes of Clock Tower, because even in its early form, there's a lot of similarities. This is before Capcom got their hands on the series. Doing the YouTube channel, people have asked me about it a lot. Can you get involved in this and Point and Ground as well? I never actually played any of the games, however, until incredibly recently, like right now. I'm currently going through the games, which you can see at Backseating on YouTube. Cheap plug. No, sorry. But I think, yeah, Clock Tower is a fascinating series. It's very all over the place, though, which is something I think we're going to talk about a lot, from its beginnings in 1995 to where it ended up turning up in the mid 2000s. It is a heck of a journey.
Drill?
Yeah, there's a funny story about that. But yeah, actually, I think the first time I ever knew of the series was 3, because back when Blockbuster was still around, if anyone ever remembers that, they would all they would have us rent new games for like 5 days. I think like they had like a gold label on them where you could only keep them for like 3 or 5 days, I think. So my sister rented Clock Tower 3, and that's how I got exposed to it. Although although the first scene I ever saw was when that hammer guy like bashed the girl's head in, so that was interesting. And then after that, I think I found it at like a flea market for $10 compared to what it's worth now.
Crap, really? $10?
Yep.
That's a gem. Nice.
Yeah.
Clock
and then
Tower
I
2,
and then I
almost
thought, and then I
$500. What
remembered
the
there
fuck?
was a sequel. Well, technically it was going to be Clock Tower 4 with Haunting Ground, and then I found it on eBay for like $80
Dude,
back when it was still affordable.
look at these prices. That's insane, man.
I love the story for that one right there.
Yeah, just I got tweeted this a week ago of one of those little stores in the States. Clock Tower 2 on sale for $441.99.
It was always a pricey game. It just went up really high because of pandemic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I will quote my response to this thread, which was, "What the actual living fuck?" That was my response.
Yeah. And then I think with
PS1.
I think with 2 I saw a playthrough of it, and then I thought, wow, this game's shit. And yeah, that's pretty much my exposure. Oh, also I watched some videos on the first one and technically First Fear, since the first Clock Tower game's actually a sequel.
Yeah, there's a lot of like weird labeling with the names from what I noticed. Like, apparently Clock Tower 2 isn't really no, I think it's the first Clock Tower for the PS1, the very first one, not First Fear. That's Clock Tower 2 in Japan, I believe.
It's no.
Yeah.
I think it's I think if memory serves, the very original one. I don't think ever saw a localized release outside Japan. But
No,
Yeah.
it was on the Famicom /
Famicom.
PlayStation.
But they
Yeah.
Super
called it
Famicom.
they called it the First Fear on the PS1, which is a port or enhanced version of that game, which I played patched. I think they made like an English localization, and I played it there.
Yeah,
But
well, the First Fear is confusing because the First Fear is a remake of the game that came out 2 years after it initially came out, which was a year after the 1996 one on the PlayStation 1. So it's all fucking.
it's all backwards. Yeah.
I'm looking at the thing right now, and First Fear or Clock Tower: The First Fear is the first installment of the Clock Tower series.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
the 2D version we're going to talk about in a second. Yeah, it was 95. And then it didn't see a localization until 97, by which point Clock Tower 2 had already come out, although the US didn't know that, so it was called Clock Tower 1 because this was in the world where, much like Final Fantasy, the numbering system
I'm about to say that.
the US and Japan.
Yeah, it ended
completely
up
makes no
working
sense.
out.
It's the exact same
It-
thing.
yeah, Ghost Head was called 2, and then and then 3 ended up still being called 3 because it was the third game we got.
Exactly. So it's
So it all
exactly
worked out
so.
technically.
Well, it was originally called 3 in Japan anyway because Ghost Head, I forget the American title, but Clock Tower Ghost Head is not a continuation of the
It's a
actual
spin-off.
storyline. It's a spin-off. So that's why they
And
still kept Clock Tower 1, 2, and then 3, which was the
al-
fourth one.
also Ghost Head took place in Japan while the US version made them all American.
Yeah.
They called
It's
Ghost Head in America Clock Tower 2 The Struggle Within. So it's still
yeah.
it's still confusing nonetheless because now when you really think about it, there's technically 2 Clock Tower 2s. I don't know.
I'm confused.
The sad point is that by that point in the series, this was the least of their problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we should move on.
Sure.
We
So
gotta start
question
with
number
the
2.
game.
Yeah, Shadow, read it.
Yeah. So, the earliest Clock Tower game was known for its 2D point and click adventure style. Does it feel outdated for its legacy titles? I think one thing I've had to bear in mind because I've been going through the series recently is a lot of this you have to bear in mind. There's a lot of context. So if you're talking about the original game, you got to think back to 1995, and gaming was pretty different compared to what it is now. Um, and that's just the nature of it, on the Famicom system. There's only so much you could physically do. And obviously, you look at nowadays standards with everything that goes on now. You look at it and think, how was this a medium that existed? Why don't you might as well go read a book in like an empty room with like some air conditioning, and that'd be just as fun. I think, to be honest, I think it's complicated. I think Clock Tower has always chosen to have one foot sort of like in the past a little bit. And you think of all the games that were coming out and around it, the Resident Evil series was about to start kicking in. Silent Hill wasn't much further down the line. A series like Clock Tower kind of going for a bit more sort of old-fashioned, traditional sort of style of gaming. I think is always destined to be a bit nichey. It's like if you had like a really knowledgeable like an amateur writer that you knew and you asked them to write a slasher flick in a mansion with a bit of a supernatural element, you probably wouldn't get something too far away from what Clock Tower actually is in the end. And it's not a knock for Clock Tower, but there's only so much you could do in 1995. You couldn't have these crazy
96 actually.
96, whichever one it is, 96, yeah. Either way, like there's only so much you could physically do with video games. It was just starting to go through the revolution into 3D graphics, and the whole world that opened up from then. I think it was perfectly serviceable. I think for what it needed to do, it was fairly basic. It was fairly straightforward. There's nothing too complicated. It didn't need to be really. To be fair, I actually thought the style of art was actually not too bad for the game. But I think you can't look at it with modern eyes because I think that would be a bit unfair. You have to try and take it in context of what was out at the time.
Even at the time, though, it received quite a bit of criticism for being point and click.
Yeah, I mean, like this is what I mean that because again, a lot of games around were starting to go down this route of exploring out more, but I guess human entertainment kind of didn't want that sort of idea to die, or they felt they could do something still with the medium of a slower paced sort of style of game and kind of a more brooding atmosphere and kind of like trying to instill that fear upon the player. I think it was a difficult ask and it's a tough sell, and you're never really going to convince like the vast majority to really buy into it. But if you're into that kind of thing, I think there's definitely scope to play the game and kind of try and get involved in that sort of thing. And the game has its moments. Even the first game, I think, has its moments where it gets at you a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's also because it came out it came out 9 months after RE1.
Yep.
And they were moving from a new console from the Super Famicom to the PlayStation.
Yeah. Again, this is
the two games are only a year apart.
Yeah, which is quite staggering when you think about it. And while yes, admittedly, Resident Evil 1 at the time was it was like it wasn't quite series defining. People think that Resident Evil 1 dropped and that was it. Survival horror was changed forever and a day. It wasn't quite like that. It took another installment to really kind of solidify that. But
Yeah, realistically, that would have been Resident Evil 2.
yeah, exactly. Resident Evil 2
Yeah.
really laid that down. But I think it showed already that the trends were changing. And whether you want to criticize human entertainment for perhaps being stuck in their ways or admire them for trying to do one last spin with kind of an older version of the medium, I think kind of depends on how you want to look at it, really. It's a bit kind of glass half empty, glass half full sort of thing.
So the
I
only
know
thing.
I have not.
Good.
I say like I don't have a lot of experience with the original games though. But I'll say this though, like it's better to stick with than try to do something completely new because God forbid it went full 3D, it could have turned out for the worse versus staying what they know and the game would have stayed at least consistently decent or good. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, the original game, of literally like a slasher novel, but kind of put into a Super Famicom game, if that makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
it's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of crazy twists and turns. We obviously talk about some plot bits and pieces and regarding obviously the main character and why she's actually there. But it's all kind of fairly typical stuff. Your group of people are there. They're all orphans, and it turns out people looking after them are actually crazy people because, of course, they are. But it doesn't have to be super complicated. You know,
Yeah.
you're not there on the Super Famicom trying to weave like winding ballads. You're there to deliver an experience and kind of and they went for a suspenseful style. I think there are definitely the game is probably a bit too long in the tooth, more often than not, to kind of really get on. It does get a bit chory when you start having to go backwards and forwards and like you're trying to work out what to do. It can be a bit frustrating. But I can't say that I think it's a bad game. It might be a bad game when you look at it in 2021, but I think for the time, I think it was a good starting point. You know, it was something to have at and begin with, and something to build from, which I think they actually legitimately at least attempted to do.
Yeah. Also, what's funny is that the original game takes a lot of ideas from Phenomena, the Dario Argento film from the 80s, since they kind of have a similar plot.
Mm.
Even the main character is like
that's-
modeled after Jennifer in that movie, so you're not wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's clear
Yeah.
that she was modeled after Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah. Which is
it's not
fine,
just a
you
similar
know?
plot; it's the main actress.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, why not do so? Like I said, it is a series that has unabashedly a little bit old school. So why not do that? You know, makes sense to me. I would probably do it.
So my only issue with all of this, and I usually play retro games, as the time they came out, I have my mindset that they're old. But one thing that was really mind-boggling was just how cryptic the original clock tower was, like finding out where to go, the navigation, what to do. That's all core to the game. And another thing I kind of didn't like is how they tried to adapt the point and click mouse and keyboard thing to controllers, because honestly, if you're going back and playing these games, you might as well rewire your controller to be mouse and keyboard, because I had situations where I tried to pick up something to hit Scissorman and he ended up killing me because somehow I was too slow to pick up the weapon even though it was pinpoint accurate. So there's those little like nagging problems that were like in the back of my head when I played the first one, even though I still enjoyed it.
Now, while I would agree, I will make one mention and say that I have played the original Alone in the Dark, which was control as you see fit tank controls, and my god, that
Was it
handled a
worse?
shitload of it. That was shit. Fuck me.
Oh man.
You have not seen my stream of that game. Holy fuck.
I have not played any Alone in the Dark. That's a podcast for another
Alone in
day.
the Dark one is an experience that any survival horror player should put themselves through just to see how it all began and how far we've all come. That's all I'm going to say. I did that
it
blind
predates
on
Resident
stream.
Evil.
Oh
Ooh.
man, I did that blind on stream. That was
yeah, very much so.
I'll get to it when I get to it. Trust me.
Yeah, it's
But yeah.
it is. it's frustrating, but it's not like really annoying frustrating. It makes sense. You kind of like slightly almost sympathize with the game because it's so old, but ugh, that's a rough
What's
one.
what's interesting is that the original Clock Tower and 2 actually support the PlayStation mouse if you
Yes.
happen to own one.
Yes, yeah. In fact, quiet side of here, but yeah, they do that, and I believe you can even, if you're daring and willing to, if you happen to have the game and start to emulate it, you can actually do a variant of the PlayStation One mouse as well for Clock Tower, which I did try. I think it was a bit oversensitive, but it was probably better than using a controller because it was pretty sluggish. But
Yeah.
yes, you're right. Did have PS1 mouse. And believe that? Can you believe that, folks? Or whatever is a mouse for the PlayStation 1. It just seems so absurd now.
You gotta use it because it's a pure recommendation. It's not good with a controller. And one other thing I kind of didn't like is that when I got to like Clock Tower Struggle Within, that game was, even with mouse, it was still bad in recognizing stuff. So I'm like, I don't know what is going on. Maybe certain games were like having that issue, but yeah, overall the experience was mostly good. It was just when I got to that point where everything was being like cryptic, that kind of threw me for a loop, and I had to look up a guide.
Yeah, that's I don't blame. A lot of people did. I had to look at one point. The game is a bit too vast and spacious for its own good. Like you can stumble upon quite a few of the plot lines as you go, but like piecing it together to how to actually get to the end section it's a bit of a trial and error thing, which you could potentially spend a long time playing around with stuff that means absolutely nothing.
Yep.
That is unfortunately a legacy of games from 1996.
But yeah, it was worse than the Famicom one because a lot of the rooms looked similar,
Yes.
and because how big the mansion was.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to the game, if you're going to have a game that one of its selling features, the fact you have multiple different endings, you do have to have some extraneous content that you may or may not interact with in various ways. So you do kind of have to. It kind of comes off with it. So it's part of the package, but it could have been handled better.
All right, so I guess we could move on to the next one.
Yes, Ren.
Sure, no problem. So, how did you feel about the shift to 3D and onwards after Clock Tower the first fear? Did you feel like there were clear enhancements to the formula or not?
If we're speaking like in my experience at least with 3 and Haunted Ground, I would say yes. Ignoring like some of the funky shit with 3 though, I think having it in 3D with complete full control of your character definitely enhances the experience because you can add in more moving parts into to the game.
Yeah.
Like from among other things, like having this guy follow you around from each room. God forbid, having you panic. Just like the way the games are built, at least under Capcom, definitely enhance the experience more so than the 2D ones, just from my experience.
Also, no
Yeah,
loading
I feel-
screens. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was probably the only reasonable direction to go. Because I guess they couldn't do point and click forever, so that was the only reasonable way to go.
It's a bizarre hybrid. I mean, like it really feels it. Like I've played like Broken Sword games on the PS1, which again is kind of similar feel. But yeah, having like kind of like that hybrid of like sort of miniature 3D areas to manipulate and interact with, but still using point and click, but you're still maneuvering 3D ways it's a bit jarring at first. It takes some getting used to, 100%. I would also like to say at this point, assistant director Stanley Gotts is the fucking man. Just want to get that one out there. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I
He
saw
is
him,
the man.
he punched out Scissorhead or Scissorface or whatever his name is.
Scissor Man.
Scissorman. When he punched him, that was the greatest thing ever. I saw that man get Falcon punched. It was fantastic.
Absolute legend, Stanley
Yeah.
Gotts. What a guy. To be fair, I actually reckon it's one of the highlights of the second game, the PS1 Clock Tower one. I actually reckon like the cast is like absurdly moronic, but almost sympathetically so. And to be fair, they're quite entertaining. From Jennifer to Helen, Gotts obviously is amazing. You've got the TV studio dudes. You've got the other people in the lab as well. Like I have never seen a bunch of 8 or 9 people make as many ill-informed and idiotic decisions, like costing their own lives, surely, so many times in the space of 4 hours. But it's like almost admirable, and I couldn't
mean,
help but just watch on
have
and think,
you-
how badly is this going to end?
Oh, have you seen Horror Movies, man? Like, I'm pretty sure no, that could give a good run for his money.
I mean, yes, but this is a special case. I mean, my in particular focus comes to the kid and like the adoptive mother, and how she is like, I think it's Jennifer Helen says, we're gonna head on over to England. We're just gonna travel the freaking coast. And the mother's like, no, we can't possibly do this. And the kid says, hey, we should probably do this. She's like, okay, and they just fucking go.
Should have killed Edward.
It's just like,
He should have died. He should have died.
What
Yeah.
the fuck are you talking about? And it's just, it is outrageous. If you value intelligence of your protagonists, your heroes, this is not the game for you. If you don't care about that shit, then it is just an absolute popcorn ride that is just entertaining and wacky, and I think very emblematic at the time. The game, I don't think took itself particularly seriously, and if for the benefit, it's so fucking absurd with so much shit that happens, but it's great. And it's just absurd. Like, you convince about 7 or 8 people to go on a plane to go to England from like Scandinavia, and we're all just like, sure.
And then they start getting lost, and I'm like, what the hell is happening?
They get lost in a forest instantly. Like, I mean, this is the most incompetent group of heroes I have witnessed in my life, and I love them.
Put them in a Scooby-Doo movie, they'll get killed immediately.
Well, the thing is, they don't. That's the thing. They somehow continue managing to just like avoid constant peril and carnage all around them. It's just like a bunch of blundering idiots, and it's just like, how can you criticize them for it? Like, it's so admirable. Yeah, it's great entertainment. I will also post as well, for the purposes of I hope this might make it there. This is something. Clock Tower 2 also, I think, has some of the most absurd visuals I've ever seen in a video game. This was a particular one that I summed up here. This is what can happen to Mr. Gotts if you let bad things happen at the end of the game. And it's just, as I wrote here, if there was ever a single image that sums up Clock Tower for 1996, this is absolutely it. This game is special, and everyone should play it. It is just. It's just, there is so much to take in this image and scene, from Gotts to what Jennifer's actually caring about. It's one of the most incredible scenes I've seen in a PlayStation game ever. And think of the ground that covers.
So reverse T-pose, and the man is getting grinded in some gears. Like, that's fantastic. Bravo to this game.
There is suspension of disbelief. There is destruction of physics.
They look painful.
What's they?
Yeah, what's the they referring to?
Gotts? Does he mean Gotts' nuts? Like,
okay.
No, I don't.
It could just be a spelling. It could just be a mistranslation.
It is, but it's like I should criticize this image and say this is a horrendous video game, but I just can't bring myself to do it.
I mean,
It's like
the typical human would be like screaming, typical horror stuff, like, oh my god, they look painful. Like, what?
He's not moving, by the way. He is still as a statue in that scene.
Flesh wound.
Nothing's happening. He's just, it's amazing. This if you've not played Clock Tower, PlayStation 1996, just do it, everyone. Do yourself a favor, put yourself down for a few hours, and go for a maybe sort of questionable beginning, and just fucking sit back and watch the ride.
There's just a lot of memes in this game. It
is.
Just a lot.
If this game came out 15 years later, like, it would be the most famous game in history.
All right. Anything else to add into this one?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to talk about the second game without talking about the one that followed it, which I think, yeah, I mean, like it has to be covered here. I think the biggest crime of this whole thing is, like, to me, like, the first game for the Famicom kind of like set the ground and gave an opportunity to like something to build upon. Something I honestly, legitimately think they did with the second title. And they kind of they took a wacky turn, but they built upon what kind of worked and made it a bit more actiony, which is more engaging. And I actually think it wasn't a bad title. And I think the biggest crime is not just that they got this wrong with the struggle within, but I think that it was got the basics wrong on every account, and it's so disappointing. I mean, I played 3 videos of it. I did 2 hours of that game, and I couldn't do any more. And it's just like I couldn't bring myself to continue the series. I just like it's there's so much to criticize. Where do we even begin?
Well, yeah, that kind of killed the franchise for them.
It was, I mean, I've heard people talk about like Mass Effect Andromedon being a series killer, Fallout 76 being a series killer. Clock Tower 2 The Struggle Within was a series killer. Like, and there is
well, yeah, they went out of business after that.
I know. It's just, and to be honest, I think that was the right thing. I think they deserve to go out of business. That game is just
Yeah, who hurt
so
you? Apparently they did.
Okay,
so
I played it. I feel his pain. Clock Tower Ghost Head is so cryptic with everything you have to do. I was talking to Ninja about it. He was saying that you have to do things in a certain order, otherwise you die. You could be stabbed.
Yeah.
You could be stabbed by a little girl in like the first 5 minutes and instantly die if you don't like parry her, which is very dumb. You have to expect the samurai armor, otherwise you will get the bad ending. It's so dumb.
That's probably my favorite one in particular, is that if you don't look at the armor, you die.
Yeah, like
later on in the game.
How would you know that as a first-time player?
It reminds me of something. It reminds me of, if you think back to those point and click games for PC in like the mid to late 80s, how you'd have like this obscure item that you'd have to pick up at the start of the game, and if you never picked it up, the game will wait until the very end to fuck you and say you have to play the whole game again because you didn't pick up this weird looking cloth at the start, which you actually needed to save the world in the end of the game, and you're like, you're a fucking dick. Like, it's pretty much the same thing, really. It's a crime.
And this is all like stage 1. Like it's not like you wait until the end of the game and then all of a sudden like they start playing with you with the endings. This is like the first area of the game where they do this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even the biggest crime. I think there are some admirable things I think they tried. The whole idea of having kind of like the dual personality system between Alyssa and Bates. Like, I get the idea because you're trying to kind of like, it's like part of the puzzle. You know, there's certain things that one character can do, but the other character can't, and that sort of thing. You have to go backwards and forwards to kind of get the right solution. I think on paper, like I can see a degree of sense to it. But when you actually execute it, it becomes this horrendously painful and time-consuming trial and error repetition again and again of having to do the same bits and pieces. But like, do I do it as one? Do I do it as the other? Do I fight them? Do I run? Do I look at this window in case like this matters at the end of the game? And it's just it's so horrendously contrived, and it's just nothing feels achieved. And when you're already in a game where you're already arbitrarily moving from point A to point B to activate some random point C, which you couldn't activate before, even though point B has nothing to do with it in the first place. It just means you can now open this door. It's a game that I cannot recommend, and I wouldn't even suggest playing it for historical purposes.
Oh no, don't please don't play Ghost Head unless you want to torture yourself.
Yeah, and I mean the game has 14 different endings, so yeah.
Well, I would probably reckon only one of those is probably worthwhile, and that's the one where you get killed at the start.
Oh
and that's
my
the only one you
God,
should
dude.
ever see.
Yeah, you can actually die if you don't go into the house or something like that.
That
There's-
sounds
there's-
amazing.
Yeah,
Brandon, you
I
should
mean,
play
It
it.
was probably
I did.
intended to be like
Yeah.
it was probably
Oh.
intended to be like a joke ending.
yeah, it's such a shame. You know, the plot is completely nonsensical. It's not explained. If you read the manual, like you might have some idea of what's going on, but a manual is meant to be there to give additional information, not be if you don't read this, you're fucked. You have no idea what's going on. Yeah, there's so many areas to criticize the struggle with it. It's just a complete failure on all fronts to do a game properly. And while I'm not one to condone people losing their jobs, I'm partially glad that Human Entertainment got fell apart because of it somewhat. Because
I mean, in fairness, though, you put in shit work, though. Like, you deserve consequences.
yeah, it just wasn't good enough. And I think considering the previous game, I really enjoyed in a kind of a nihilistic way. It was like a guilty pleasure. I knew going into the third was going to be tough, but even with a low standards, it was horrendously disappointing. You know, and if that was the last we'd ever heard of Clock Tower ever, I wouldn't have been surprised. You know, it's just a horrendous shame.
All right. Oh, on that note, though, I think we should go ahead and move on to the next one. Who's already up to number 4?
Let's see.
Going once, going twice. So the drill bit.
Yeah, all right. One of them. One of the main highlights focus on pursuing enemies, namely Scissorman. You could trigger events that would knock pursuers out, but it wouldn't kill them. How do you feel about this approach of constantly being on the run versus having a gun at all times? I mean, I
I'll
don't.
to be quite frank, though, like the pursuers or stalkers and Clock Tower, like a simple gun just will not put them down.
No,
I mean, well, Clock Tower Struggle Within demonstrated this, but you could physically shoot a fucking kid. Like what?
That kid probably earned it too, though. So anyway,
I mean,
like go.
nothing is scarier than to be chased by some maniac killer with no weapon.
I mean, at least I think I think it at least offers a different way of playing a survival horror game. I don't mind the run and hide thing, although I don't like it when it's cryptic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
not
They
only
got-
adds to the like scare factor, I think, but it also makes you have to think more creatively how to get past them. Are you at a dead end? Looking around for items. I feel like it adds a lot more to games than games where you just have a weapon, hit them once or twice, and you're done.
I mean, although it was kind of bullshit with the second game because sometimes you only could back them off if you use the amulet.
Ugh. Jeez.
Honestly, it made me wish you
I'm
could
so
just
done with that game. I can't even go there anymore.
Honestly, it just makes me wish you could just be baits all the time because you can at least knock them out.
Yeah, and at least he had some good lines. I mean, like, I actually reckon for the whole, I feel they did the whole kind of stalker pursuit stuff actually not too badly. Especially in a game which is very tension based, you have to have some things that some breaking points where like the tensions turns into like actual something happening, and it's kind of like putting you in a situation you have to deal with. I think even the original game, like it was probably some of the better parts when you're actually being chased by Scissorman. And for the 96 version, the PlayStation 1, whenever it came out, there was some wacky stuff. Sometimes it was arbitrary. You have to like, there's the fire extinguisher? Why am I about to use like a kendo stick on this dude? But it all works. And some of the animations are admittedly hilarious. Attacking Scissorman with a frying pan or getting a pot and just chuck it in his head and running away. I mean, you can't not laugh at that. But you have to have this whole kind of pursuer thing, and it's something that obviously, as time has gone on throughout gaming, is something that's been revisited and refined. Obviously, Nemesis is the obvious go-to. That's something you could fight back at least, but it was not really about that. It was that constant omnipresence, and you have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate for, like, say, Haunted Ground, for example, is how each pursuer is like generally different from the other. Of course, that applies to all the games though, but in this one in particular, you have your big strong guy, the first one, who's super slow. You got your quick witted, who actually uses the environment against you, as you would against the stalkers. You got the asshole with the gun, and you got the asshole with the supernatural powers.
Sounds like Dead by Daylight.
Although towards the end of Haunting Ground, it gets a bit silly.
I mean, isn't like most clock era games silly? 3 hint.
Yeah, I mean, probably, but I think to be fair, when did Haunted Ground come out? 2006.
2005, same year as Resident Evil 4, by the way, which why that game is so.
That is astonishing, isn't it? It's absolutely. That's an astonishing fact, everyone. We are so old. No,
right?
And not just that, but like, yeah, exactly. You've gone far enough in gaming that you should be able to like have some things that kind of manipulate the environment or play around with stuff in bits and pieces. Experiment, explore, do different shit. Why the hell not?
Mm-hmm. Anything else to answer this question? Because I feel like that writer just came and went.
Nope.
I don't think so. I would say is that I think sometimes it came across probably a bit clunky, and obviously there's some frustrations where like you'll get attacked maybe, and then you're pushing away, and then you don't control where your person runs to, and they just run to like the absolute worst freaking door ever. You're just like ugh, or they run themselves into a dead end with no health. Just like ugh.
Which is actually the next question too, though, because I do have very mixed opinions on the panic system.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. Good point, actually. Good segue. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. No, since you're talking about it, might as well just read it off then.
Yeah. So, what are our thoughts on the panic system? Usually, there's a traditional health bar that shows damage accrued over time, but Clock Tower and Haunted Ground seem to be more focused on how scared the character is. If panic is full, then your character could possibly trip, stand still, or die in one hit. How do you think this was ultimately handled?
I actually want to go first in this one.
Yeah.
Now, I actually like the idea of the panic system. Like, you're literally having a panic tag, right? Because of the situation you're in, right? But the one thing that I will not be in favor for is taking away the control of my character. Like, if I'm going, left, I better not be going down. Let me go to the direction I'm picking, right? It's one thing to make me, run slower or tripping, which, that makes sense because you're panicking. Or, potentially make a sloppy mistake where it could actually get you killed in one hit, right? That's fine. I can at least live with that, right? But I just cannot stand to not have any form of control whatsoever. And that's one thing I would never, especially Clock Tower 3. No, the pen system in that one is honestly part of the worst example of it, at least from other games that have similar system in place. Because once the girl gets his peak panic, though, she just like started to hitchhike over the place. Like go left, go right. She goes everywhere else but the direction that you want to go. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was just frustrating.
It's a very fine line, isn't it, though, between like kind of hindering the player and not just taking away their one form of control over what's actually happening. So it can be a very fine line, and one that Clock Tower and Haunting Ground, like, they kind of ultimately have to sort of tread because they're trying to inhibit the player. But how you do that in a way that's not completely restrictive that can be very difficult.
Yeah, on top of that too, like even if I say the mechanic was like the best thing ever, right? If that one flaw that's seriously crippling, then people would just discount it completely, regardless how everything else about it was great.
I just hate the random stage fright. Like, move, you're about to be killed. Like, don't just stand there, move. Like, that's one thing I just did not like about the panic system. As an idea, it's interesting and intriguing because, usually you take damage, you get injured, stuff like that. But this is like different. It's like all based on fear. I like how it's done. I just don't like how it's executed.
Right.
But I was gonna add, like, with the third game, it's kind of not as much of a big deal because you can always just use items to take it away immediately.
I do like that you can gain it back or you could use items. In the first one, you could not do that. You had to just sit there and wait until your meter gets full again as opposed to using items or having the panic system like regenerate, because it did not do that in the first one
Well,
unless you stood like totally still.
Well, you see though, like that's also assuming that if you have items in the first place though, because it is really, really easy to get your panic meter up to maximum in 3, right? So if you just
Yeah.
constantly burning items still left and right, then you're gonna run out of something that will cleanse your madness. On top of that too though, I don't remember if there's a thing or not though, but doesn't Clock Tower penalize you for using items anyway? Or at least
Mm,
3 and 4.
no, the third one doesn't. There's no.
Okay.
You can
I
just
was,
use items as long as you have them.
I was making sure because given this is Capcom here though, sometimes they will penalize you for using items in certain games.
As
But I was
for
making sure.
getting into situational stuff like that, I did not like waste a lot of items because I just kept like refilling on holy water, and the guys will like stop chasing me for like a few seconds. But it is kind of excruciating when like they spawn right on top of you. I had that happen like twice where they spawn on top of you and automatically your panic meter goes all the way up to orange, and I'm like, what the hell, how is this dude on me? Yeah, it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I feel like in Clock Tower 3, I would have probably hated the panic system a lot more if it weren't for the fact that you had the holy water, you had all the items. Like, I never found it to be that much trouble for me. But if I didn't have that, I think it would have been a lot more annoying.
Oh, I
Yeah.
definitely agree.
I think it's worth. Yeah, especially later in the game where you don't even have. There's not even any safe rooms, so you just have to keep moving.
Yeah, I agree. It's what little I've managed to play of Clock Tower 3 at the moment. Because obviously it's I think it's fascinating anyway, seeing how you've got this very old sort of style series that's then been kind of taken from by Sunsoft, and then Capcom ended up developing a game off the back of it. And I think it's fascinating watch them kind of bring their own brand onto the series. Like you can see Capcom's fingerprints all over Clock Tower 3 in all sorts of ways and designs and how the game works and it looks. But it is ultimately the problem you have is how do you take a very kind of old school and slow style and how do you bring it into the 21st century? And it's kind of difficult, really, because you're trying to do like the suspenseful kind of chasing thriller style, but like it's very passe, I think, which is I think using items and stuff to kind of like deal with the panic meter definitely strikes me as a very kind of 21st kind of workaround. It doesn't really address the core issue. It's kind of just trying to band-aid it and kind of make you forget that it exists, as if it's a problem you just kind of get on with it. It's like, oh well, I had a bad spot, well let's just use an item and we just move on with our lives. It's not ideal, I don't think, but I guess it kind of works. Question mark. There doesn't seem to be a particular shortage of
Well,
items, so.
that's actually one of the particular thing I really like about Haunted Ground, just from a structural standpoint. Like Capcom took like what they did with 3 Clock Tower in general and just literally made their own game, rather than it's just like, okay, this is Clock Tower, right? How can we make it familiar while also doing our own thing, right? Here next in this other game, Haunted Ground with Demento and overseas, it's our own game. We do what the fuck with it. So that's
Yeah, although it's funny because it was a Clock Tower game, but it was supposed to be Clock Tower 4, but they also used ideas from like from like I think it was the castle version of Resident Evil 4.
and they use assets and whatnot from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, because apparently Leon was supposed to meet a girl with a dog similar to the Haunting Ground.
There's a lot of things that Leon was and wasn't meant to do in that castle. It's fascinating, but yeah.
There's also some sounds and assets taken from Devil May Cry, so I really enjoyed this era of Capcom where they had like a hodgepodge of ideas. It was really just entertaining back then.
It's a real melting pot. Like it definitely strikes me as that. It's fascinating to look back at it like 15, 20 years, like looking back and just kind of seeing all these really homebrew ideas and then seeing how some of them spawned into stuff that moved on later on, like you said with Devil May Cry and such. It's very fascinating.
Anything else to add to number what was it, 5?
6.
6, whatever. No, going once, going twice. All right, so who wants to read off number 6? Or whatever number one.
I'll read it.
Go on, Manfi.
So, Clock Tower and Haunting Ground had lots of predetermined events or endings. Events would either lead to enemies being knocked out or would end with you being killed. What was your favorite and least favorite event?
Is it a con to say that my favorite and least favorite event is the fact that this system exists? Or is that not a fair answer?
I kind of get what you're saying though, because
yeah, you know what I mean. Like having gone through struggle within, or just the struggle, that you know what it's about. I think it's fine. Like you have to have some way of defending yourself and buying yourself time. The problem is, how do you not make this incredibly contrived? And I think that's where you start getting unstuck very, very quickly. Like you kind of get the idea, you know, like kind of pushing like some heavy object at the guy chasing you to buy you some time, knocking out quickly. Fine, you know. Someone's trying to bust through the door, put like a chest of drawers in front so they can't do that. Makes perfect sense. I'd do that. But when literally, you know, when you walk through a door and you grab like a stick and the attacker just walks up to you casually and you just hit him on the head and you just leave the room. I mean,
I do like
this is the problem you have.
As an alternative for like knocking out the enemies. I do like that is there, but I also hate that it can fuck you over, because I've seen in Clock Tower 2, I was trying to run out of a castle door. I ran out of it and there was a bottomless pit. So the character, the character latched on to like the door, and there goes like Scissorman. He just flew out of the door, and my character also dies. So that's like a kamikaze, a double kill right there. I'm like, why is this game like this? Like, no.
There are a couple of kind of fake outs. There's a couple of items you can try and use in chase, but don't actually do anything as well, which I think's fine. I think like expecting everything to work, I kind of get, but I can understand why that can be frustrating, especially in a situation like that. Although to be fair, the image of like playing as Helen hanging onto a doorknob and this man just charging you and you'll fall into a bottomless pit sounds pretty funny to me.
That's too hilarious. Like it was like a double kill, and I think it's also linked to the panic system, because there's like a struggle mechanic in this game where you can actually get out of stuff and break it. So there's one moment where Gots like punched out Scissorman, and it was another one where I just instantly died.
Yeah, because your struggle doubles as your health meter. You can get into like 2 struggles, and then you can't get into a third unless you have some time to recuperate, basically, and not be involved in anything.
Yep.
You know, so like you have to ultimately, and getting out of the struggles doesn't really do anything. It's kind of like that's like your 3 strikes and you're out rule. By that point, you've got to have worked out a way to hide or to deal with the situation otherwise, which wasn't I don't think it was overly punishing. I think it was generally pretty reasonable.
I think it's the worst when like either RNG happens or you both just die, or you just die and you don't know what you're doing. You went to the wrong place, an event triggered, and you get killed. Because I had that happen to me on Haunting Ground.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I probably shouldn't ask what exactly, because I'll probably spoil it. But
oh, I don't want to spoil it, but you will know when you see it. Believe me.
I'm sure.
I can't even say what it is because it's spoilers, but you will see what I mean.
Yeah.
Imagine being on a podcast and worry about spoilers.
Well, for him, I just want him to walk into it and watch the madness. That's it.
It will be recorded, I can assure you.
I know what it is.
But yeah, I do have a problem with. I get the system. I think it's very prone to just being completely absurd and kind of breaking any suspension of disbelief. Like there's definitely some entertainment, as I mentioned, the in the kitchen, in the back end of PlayStation 1's Clock Tower. You know, like attacking Scissorman by hiding behind a table with a cooking pot and just chucking it on his head and running is pretty good. Got's just punching Scissorman straight in the face is we've said multiple times is fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot to enjoy, a hell of a lot to enjoy, and but the problem is that you can get a game out of it, maybe 2 games, and you start running out of ideas. And it has to look believable as well. At least placed Clock Tower PS1 like it had like full animations generally for what was actually happening, rather than, as I said in Clock Tower Struggle Within, walk to object, grab object, face an intruder, don't move. They walk up to you, you hit them, you walk out the door. That's literally a play by play of what happens, and how can you defend that?
All right. Anything else to add to this question?
Yeah, events are kind of trash. Like I had one moment where Miss Mary choked me to death in the original, and then I had a moment where I approached the mirror and it broke and it didn't happen. So there's RNG deaths in that game.
Yes, in the first one. Yeah, there is some
yeah.
randomness to some of the events that occurs, so that's all fun.
It just sounds like the first game has a lot of trial and error.
Oh,
I
it
guess
does,
back,
believe me.
I guess back then, without the internet, you would just have to keep playing it over and over again until you knew everything.
Which is hard
Oh.
because the game randomized its own map to some degree as well. So it was very kind of threw it all out on the wall and kind of saw what stuck. So some of it did all right, some of it did not age well. And I think to be fair, a lot of the event stuff, I think that probably sums up. I think it's very of its time. It's very much kind of very mid to late 90s sort of gaming. This whole kind of event sort of thing, like the illusion of choice, where half the time it's not really a choice at all.
Well, as Bart Simpson gets choked out in the chat, we can move on to the next question.
Oh no, scared sheep. We'll read off the next question.
Yeah, sure.
We're on number 7.
There we go. What was your favorite and least favorite ending?
I'm not gonna comment on this one. Yeah, Shadow should name off the 14 endings he likes so much in that particular game.
Jesus.
What was it?
I've not seen too many of them. I mean, I do like some of them. I will say the one that does stick out is if you just try and chicken out in the original game, you just get the car keys, get the car, just drive off, and like this is a bad end. This can't end when you're just driving away happily, and then you just see the flash of the scissors behind, like, well, I gone done fucked up.
And you don't even check the car before you get in.
Yeah.
That's the crappy part.
Well,
Jennifer's
how did he get in, Bill?
She's
did you have to do it?
young. She somehow knows how to drive at like 14 years old, which is pretty impressive. So yeah. But to be fair, like I think the game has some not too bad endings. Clock Tower 2's got a couple of funky ones. I think just the good endings, Clock Tower 2, I don't think aren't that bad. They're a bit cheesy. The whole Jennifer Nolan stuff is a little.
I heard that.
It's very 1997. That's I think about all I can really say for that. But
it's an 11-year gap. An 11-year gap. Like, no.
It's a little awkward. Made awkward because by that point you've forgotten who started with who. So that doesn't particularly help. It's pretty uncomfortable, but it's like it was the mid-90s. No one gives a shit about that in the mid-90s, apparently. That sounds so bad, but it's not entirely untrue. But even just the general ending of taking on Scissorman and like the portal opening, and then holding on for dear life, and Gots, of course, the hero that we all need in our lives, comes in and saves the day. All that sort of good stuff, jazz. So. But some of the bad endings, to be fair, are also kind of like pretty horrendous. Especially like some of the fates that can like come to some of your allies. As I've shown what happens to Gots, you can have Barton literally impaled on a tree. There's some very miserable endings that can happen to some of you.
So yeah, it sounds like the only way to get the absolute best endings is just look up a guide.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or a lot of trial and error and saving. But nowadays, yeah, if you want the best endings,
I think it has quick saving anyway.
There is saving, yeah, to some degree. Some of the games have some continue features, but the problem is it's difficult to know at what point you've already fucked your path. That's kind of the nature of these sort of games. But yeah, like getting the best endings is definitely a bit of work.
Well, except for the third one, which is very straightforward.
That's my understanding, which I'm not unhappy with, to be fair. But be honest, I think by that point, I think the game series to me, like, I don't think it's really trying to go for that anymore. It's trying to be more of a cinematic kind of artistic experience more than like we have 26 different endings because that's how many letters the alphabet we've got. Go get them all, and you're just like, why would I ever do this?
I
You know,
mean, considering they had Kinji Fukusaku directed, who also did Battle Royale.
Ending Z. Actually, listen to your mother and don't go to the fucking house.
Although
Yes.
although it is kind of sad is that I think he died like a month after like the Japanese release.
Something like that, yeah, which is pretty sad.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Jumping to Haunting Ground, did anyone else who played it get a different ending other than the good one? It's the only one I ever got, but I actually
Well,
really
which one's
liked
the
it.
good one?
Uh,
You mean,
'Cause,
you mean the
the-
really bad ending where like she gets
oh,
knocked
no
up?
spoilers.
yeah, that's like the bad one where she gets impregnated.
Yeah, I'm supposed to spoilers. Well, yeah, the one that I liked the most really was C.
I don't know. I like the ending where the dog and her live.
Yeah,
And
that's the one that
that's
I always got.
That's well, honestly, A, B, and C though, but the one in particular one I like to see the most out of all three. But A is I think the more definitive ending, given the
Yeah.
circumstances of the game.
So I would say favorite ending is Got's like being a hero, and least favorite is probably being stabbed in the vagina by that little girl in Struggle Within, and then everything in Haunting Ground that Ricardo does, because that is a gross implication and is really fucked up. That game is just like all forms of messed up with like a lot of sexual implications and impregnation, and Ricardo being Ricardo, who needs to be shot in the kneecaps.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it is very upfront that he's a deviant and a weirdo.
So is you, who likes to suck on toes like Quentin Tarantino. I got it.
God, that's no bless like
Sorry.
holy shit, man, you doing good until now. God damn, the man love.
I'll let him live for now, maybe. But I can't think of any other endings. Some of the joke endings are pretty funny, from what I've seen, but I haven't seen like all of them. But there are like those moments where you can like turn back and you'll automatically get killed. So I think that's like actually pretty entertaining.
Yeah. Although the Clock Tower 2 ones are more annoying because it's just stuff that you have to already know about.
Yeah, some of them are cryptic, some not so much. Ghost Head is just like, well, you better know like 80,000 things, otherwise you're not getting the good ending at all. It's the most
feels like
annoying in
they-
that game.
It just feels like they want you to fail your first couple playthroughs before you have to look it up and see how to get the best ending.
I
Yep.
guess who knows,
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm thinking too deep, but I guess so people wouldn't just beat it in a weekend and rent it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that mentality.
Yeah. Like you ever rent maybe you ever rent a PS1 game and beat it in a weekend?
Oh, not PS1 game, but
No.
PC games, yeah.
PS2?
Yeah, there's several of them actually. The one that actually, shit you not, I beat in one setting was a Ben 10 game back in the day. Like literally, I beat that in one night, and like that was it.
Damn, it must have been really short then.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, the games back then were never very long anyway.
Here and there, yeah,
So it depends on what type of game you're playing.
yeah. I played some long games back in the day, or
Yeah.
some drawn out ones.
honestly, it just makes me really miss places like Blockbuster where you can just rent games.
And get yourself a box of candy too while you're at it.
Yep. And we came back and said like, "Hey, look, you gave me the wrong disc," but that's whatever.
So
Rest in
I
peace, Blockbuster.
so I suppose near question number 9, we have to, when we start talking about Haunting Ground, we have to put Shadow on sabbatical because yeah, there's gonna be some story details.
Yeah, which is fine. I accept this. So.
Yeah.
We'll let you know when we get there, but this is another Haunting Ground question for number 8, so I'll read it off. Haunting Ground introduced a companion with a dog named Huey. How do you feel about their approach on how he factored into the game, especially with your bond with him being affected, and it affected some of the endings you got as well?
And it's
Honestly,
different.
it's probably one of the best companion things that Capcom has done. Cause for one, he's basically your defense and your offense. But on top of that, actually, there's actually a game mode where you play as Huey and you got Fiona to the objective. So they should tell you how well Huey translated into the game via gameplay or as a AI component.
Yeah.
I love
It's all
having
I think
Huey.
it's like one of the very few games that actually had a dog companion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, Call of Duty.
You don't really see a lot of games that utilize like animals being used as a companion. So this was something very different back in the day.
Yep, and if there was games that did that, it's usually like a small segment. It doesn't last for like nearly most of the experience.
Yeah.
Oh well, okay. There was in Call of Duty Ghosts, the dog.
Yeah,
That was
dog.
like
The
eh,
realistic AI dog.
yeah,
Look
where you
at
can have
fish.
it bite enemies.
But this was next level. I really enjoyed it. You have to obviously get the dog to come over, and it could be a little bit annoying, but just pet him. And I seen some monsters kick him too. I'm like, why are you doing this? Cut the whole playthrough off right now.
Yeah,
You essentially as the player bond with the dog, not just Fiona, just like you in general, just bond with the dog. I don't
yeah.
know.
Mhm.
I don't. But yeah, you can get an ending if you're mean to the dog all the time.
Why
Although
would you
that
want to
is
be? Why would you want to be mean to the dog, though? I mean,
I mean,
Because
you can.
humanity is horrendous when it wants to be. That's why.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't condone this.
Yeah, you can't trust people. You just can't.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But I really like enjoyed this. I think if they did it again, it would be pretty cool because very simple commands. You make him sit. He does puzzles as well. So if you want him to sit somewhere and open a door or something while you figure things out, then the dog is needed for that, as well as to get into extra areas. So I thought that the way they incorporated it didn't feel like it was a throwaway mechanic. It felt like organic to the entire experience.
Quite literally, considering that you had to go your way to train it.
Yep. And if you
Yeah.
don't, he will not obey. I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think the only thing annoying was that some parts you needed the dog, and it was a bit cryptic to figure out how to get him to do
Oh.
the puzzles.
Hey, you remember that Astro puzzle thing? Yeah, that was
Yeah.
easy.
Oh yeah, one thing I did like is that you do need Huey to help you on the boss fight later on.
I mean, honestly, that's like literally most boss fights.
yeah.
Well, this one in particular, you have to have Huey like knock someone off a building.
Yeah. Good dog.
Good dog. Okay.
I guess we're done with number 8, right? Because
Yeah.
you guys have anything else said?
Yes.
I have one quick question, just to throw subjectively. I don't know if this has been asked already. It may have already come up, but I need to ask:
What's
if
up?
Haunting Ground is Fiona simply just Jill Valentine for Resident Evil 5, but
was
like
waiting
10
for
years
someone to say
Yeah. You know, that's the thing everybody asks. Like, why does she look like Jill? And nobody knows the answer. Like, nobody.
Like, it's shockingly familiar. I get the
Yeah.
idea of modeling her kind of semi-Jillish anyways. Like, I can get that it's Capcom, they're gonna do it sort of thing, but it's like it's frightening. You put a side to side battle suit, it's just like it's just
Yeah, I might add too. Like she predated Blonde Jill before Jill became blonde herself.
yeah, exactly. There
I
wasn't
was
even a
gonna say,
thing.
like,
It wasn't
did
even a
Resident
thing.
Evil 5 come out before
No,
or after?
Resident 5
Oh,
was
wait,
Oh, it was
way
way
after.
after. Way after.
I mean, they were already they were. I mean, they already were intending Jill to be in the plot anyway of 5.
Resident Evil 5 didn't come out for another like 4 years.
Yeah,
But they
2005
they did
for
tease
Haunting.
they did tease RE5 back in like 2005 or 6.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
there was
Yeah,
first
that
announced
was a tease, yes, but not
a lot
we didn't know
from
any
Jill.
groundwork for Jill Valentine herself.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we all have Fiona to thank. She is the Jill prototype.
Thank you,
that we-
Fiona.
Cheers for that.
I guess we're going to do number 9. I read this one off. How did you feel about the overall story for Cloud Tower or Hunter Ground? Did anything stand out when you played them? For me, I will stay on Hunter Ground though. But first, I'll let you guys talk about Clock Tower, and I guess I get my pins on 3 because yeah, reasons. So yeah,
Yeah,
discuss.
I'll let you guys go first. I've said plenty already, so.
Any new people want to talk about how they felt about the clock tower story? Because honestly, to me, it's just like very straightforward stuff.
I mean,
be
you got
honest,
this. Oh, go ahead.
I just honestly found it kind of lacking, to be honest, in the storyline. It was very kind of just throwing you in bits and pieces, and then all of a sudden you've got like a fight with a bow and arrow, and you're this magical girl, and that's pretty much it until you get to the end. And there just honestly there wasn't much other than you flailing around quite spastically throughout every single cutscene.
Yeah, to me, it was like mostly characters doing dumb things, like horror movie conventions, trying to survive said conventions, and then having those character interactions, which definitely counted for a lot with Clock Tower on the PlayStation 1. So overall, for what they tried to establish, it wasn't like super deep or complex. It was just there to get the ball rolling. I did like enjoy it, but I can see how there's other plots and stories and world building where it's definitely superior to Clock Tower. Like you could definitely say RE, for example, they do a lot more with the viruses and all that stuff compared to Clock Tower's no contest. But overall, like I said, you're trying to run away, survive. So for what they did, I did appreciate it.
I mean, you really didn't get overly attached to certain characters.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So it's kind of, whereas with other series like Resident Evil, you, even if it was one game, like there was some sort of attachment that you would form with them over the course of a game. And I felt like with the Clock Tower, there was that lack of attachment with really just any of the characters.
Like Jennifer's
I
cool.
was still.
Go ahead.
I would slightly disagree, only because at least in 3 though, like this is Capcom's game, of course. At least they actually tried to give us more likable characters, or at least some form of a character, thanks to their wacky ass voice acting and mocap. So at least they try on that front though, like because honestly though, do you guys at least remember characters from 3 over say the previous games beforehand?
I would say Alyssa. I mean, of course you're gonna remember her, but Jennifer is just there, like 100%, and that's the protagonist of the game.
I exist, so notice me.
Yeah.
To be honest, the only character I feel like I ever bonded with in any of the games was Huey. So
Yeah.
Everyone loves the dog. It's common nature.
You can't be animals in any type of game.
Well, unless you try to kill you, of course, then, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that's true.
Walking Dead all over again. Another topic.
Yeah, I'd be happy to blow up a dog if it bites me, but I'm just saying,
I'm happy to blow up a dog.
Jeez.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I show no mercy.
Shadow, any last words before you go back to the den?
Go back to your rock.
I mean, as I've said, I think the original game, I think it's not too complicated. It doesn't need to be. I can't say the plot of the second game is good in the traditional sense, but if
You
you're
love it.
willing to just accept that it's terrible, there's a lot of entertainment to be had of how absurdly ridiculous it is. So it's got that going for it, I guess. And then beyond that, it's just kind of a travesty that's bitterly disappointing. That's all I can say. But it it's kind of weird. I think for a series that kind of it relies a lot on kind of the tension and kind of the plot to drive. Like so far in my experience, I to be fair, not Tower 3 plot at the moment. I'm not far into the game. Does intrigue me, and I think it's probably looks like it's going to be like the strongest part of the game. It's one of those you turn up for the game play and you ain't just staying for the plot. Like the story interests me, but like for the first three games before, I can't say the plot's been exceptionally good. But sometimes it's been like so cornily awful. It's like terrible in spite of it. It's great in spite of itself. So I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse.
Well, we have to put you on sabbatical because I guess if people want to talk about Haunting Ground, they will be able to do so in a couple of minutes. So we're gonna message you when it's time to come back for the next one.
Yeah, I will be banished to the Shadow Realm.
All right. So if anyone has any sort of spoiler discussion on Haunting Ground or anything they want to say about that plot, they are more than welcome.
Well, since we're on that though, I just love how dark and unsettling this game is. And despite all odds, though, I just love how our main heroine just comes out on top, right? She doesn't let her environment drag her down or anything like that, right?
Oh yeah.
But the thing though, like this game doesn't get enough credit for is how it handled certain themes, like the objectification, the rapey type elements and whatnot, just to name a few. Because most other games, especially in the West, will handle it in like, the worst way possible, either being outright grotesque or just you name it, right? Capcom here, at least handled it in the most tasteful way possible, like using those themes as a front while your main character is going against those fronts,
Well, I would say technically speaking, like no matter how you look at it, they are definitely ugly themes, but it's just the subtlety in finding out the character motivation and what's actually going on with like the Azoth. And because when you first hear that, like you're confused, you don't know what that is. And then when you find it out, it's like, oh god, it's something.
Yeah.
It's something like that. That was my first reaction when she was on the phone, and then to the like last point of my playthrough when I found that out, I was like, this is some of the most
That's fucked up
disturbing stuff I've ever seen from Capcom, and it's dark, but it makes you curious. It's like, how did they get away with something like this? It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I appreciate it though. Like they actually, went extra with it and it paid off. It kept you at least engaged and made you wonder, like, what are they gonna do next, or what's the next, mess up element they're gonna bring in.
And then it gets worse with Ricardo.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to note too is like I like how each stalker in a way have their own particular theme with them. Like obviously the Bellatos is like mentally ill and whatnot, wherever, right?
Well,
But
he's mentally slow.
Yes, thank you. I'm just kidding. But
Damn.
my favorite one though is definitely the maid, right? Because her personality also affects her gameplay. Because I'm not sure if you guys noticed it or not though, but if she's not chasing you though, it's a pretty good chance that she's actually cleaning something, right? That is your opportunity to go around and start doing puzzles, which is the best time, right? Because she won't obviously mess with you, stuff like that. Because her stick is that she is envious of Fiona because she's like getting all attention, and by the purpose though she's a normal woman according to her, right? So she's so jealous of her that she actually wants to just kill her and get over with.
Also, I think it was because Fiona has a body that, can pleasure a
Reproduce.
man and reproduce, and her body, on the other hand, can't.
She can't
Also-
feel virtually nothing. Like she doesn't feel pain either. Like you see
Yeah.
her nails get ripped out.
Yeah, doesn't she? Oh yeah, doesn't she have that whole thing with mirrors or something?
Yeah.
Doesn't love her reflection, some shit like that.
Isn't there
Yeah,
one of
so
them? Good.
So you can use the mirrors to distract her until she breaks it.
Isn't there one of them that like sucks blood or something?
Sucks blood. Sucks
Uh,
blood.
Like she
I think
tries
the only
to
one.
eat the ass off out.
Oh, that guy.
You talking about Lorenzo, I believe.
Yes.
The guy in the wheelchair.
Yeah, his thing is just weird because once you get to a certain point though, he turns into a Chad in terms of appearance. I'm like, oh, let me see if I can find a picture of him though. But yeah, his deal is that he's obsessed with getting the ass off, but I don't remember like in particular why he wants it so badly.
I just
I don't
know
know. I
all of
always
them are
thought it
weird.
was. I just thought
What-
it was funny how he goes chasing you on like two, with no legs.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
quick
that
too. I might add.
crawling. Yeah, that crawling was creepy and like freaky and laughable all at the same time.
Like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Like the guy has no legs, but he won't. But that's not going to stop him.
Well, I mean, he gets set on fire. That doesn't stop him either.
That man's determined. Plus, also, ending C though, which is why it's one of my favorites though. You see him still alive and crawling out the castle, but I think he trips down the stairs and just dies.
Yeah.
Like this motherfucker's determined as fuck.
All right.
Yeah, that's all I got to add on the subject.
Yeah.
Same. I guess we can get like Shadow back unless there's like any final thoughts.
We could leave him up there.
No, we gotta get him.
But I actually do have a side question to ask though.
Okay.
Yeah, get him back in.
So get him in now?
Yeah.
Okay. Come back, sir. There we go. I'm just waiting for him to undeafen.
Why until he comes back though? How many of you guys played or at least know or experienced Nightcry?
I
I've
watched
not.
it. and it-
I've heard of it, but I heard it was really bad.
This game is
It
ass,
is.
bro.
It's terrible. You can buy it on Steam now, but it's like a really bad horror movie. Like a really bad cheap horror
Well,
movie.
yeah, the plot's kind of nonsensical. It's very cryptic, and it's just not fun to play.
Yeah, it's like it's supposed to be a spiritual successor, right? But it ended up being a parody of what is supposed to be success and then succeeding.
It feels like it would probably be like a really crappy sequel to Clock Tower Ghost Head.
Yeah, I tried watching it, and honestly, the first 5 minutes was like torture. I couldn't. I turned it off, and I was like, well, Clock Tower's done for me. Then I think.
Yeah, I asked.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, people were saying that like this game called Remothered is like a Clock Tower successor, and I'm like, I've never heard of it, seen it, or played it. So has anyone else?
Okay, so
I
it
have heard of it.
was
It's-
originally supposed to be a remake of Clock Tower, but then it just evolved into something entirely different with, I guess, a protagonist that looks very similar to Jodie Foster.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it was originally supposed to be a Clock Tower game. It just ended up not being one.
It has really shit reviews though. Oh my god.
Yeah,
they
it's
can't all be bad.
the sequel does.
Yeah,
Oh,
the sequel's really bad. The first game's not too bad. I mean, it's creepy. It's got somewhat of a decent plot to it, but the second one, I don't even know where they were trying to go with it.
Is it Broken Porcelain? Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's the
2020.
sequel.
Porcelain, it's the sequel.
Yep.
They
That is
can't all be
absurd.
winners.
Tormented Fathers. So yeah, that one has better reviews though, but the other one, oof, the sequel.
Yeah.
This is a very good port if we haven't already done so already to the next question. Very good segue.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Perfect segue.
all
yeah.
right. You want to read that, Manthe?
Sunsoft said they would like to bring back classic games from their library. How should a modern Clock Tower be handled? Also, should Capcom return to develop? I actually forgot who made this game, but
Human Entertainment originally.
Yeah.
It was a long.
Yeah, they're gone.
Who was the devs? Who was the publishers?
So yeah, I definitely recommend looking into it, and at least trying out the first game because it's got some creepy bits to it. The story is interesting up until like a certain point, and then it's just like what were they trying to go with this? Because it just makes it's weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's weird. It's just something you have to experience for yourself.
Yeah, I do have a take on this. I honestly think like what to do with a game like Clock Tower after so long, I think is a legitimately very difficult question.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
I think it's very tough because it's a very. I think even when it was coming out, the concept was already a little bit dated, so you have to try and kind of. You can't quite go with what was working. Which, to be fair, is I think what they kind of did, or in anyways, with Clock Tower 3 and going on beyond that. This might be a slightly biased suggestion, and I willingly accept this. If I was to try and bring back Clock Tower, I think I would go somewhere down the line of like Resident Evil, like 7 sort of or 8 or something along those sort of lines. I think you have to go first person.
Yeah, I would agree
I
with that.
mean, third person can still work though.
Honestly, I do not want first person. I feel like that would take away from the emergence of Clock Tower. No, unless you want to go back, I mean, all the way back to the classic way of things, then sure, maybe though. But given the formula that was established by Capcom themselves, ironically enough, I will say like no, they should at least use that as a base, and then obviously tweak it to the most modern day as possible. There's no easy answer here. I might add though, but no.
It's a tough concept to bring back. I think if it was to happen, I think it's very difficult because the problem is if you kind of go for like a more kind of what it used to be, then the immediate accusation is that it's data control schemes. It's an old format. People want something new, whatever else. It's tough. That's what I honestly think. If it was to happen, I think the obvious look at would be to do something first person wise. I just imagine that's what they would do. I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's the correct way to go, but like there's so many games that have tried to do that, go first person. Not all of them have succeeded. Some of them have been pretty decent. Some of them, your mileage varies. I accept that. But I
See,
think when
that's
you're
part of the
looking
reason
at
why
like
I don't want first
2022,
person. I think they should at least be a little more safer with it and stick like at least with third person.
and
So
it's really
I think
tough.
I think like the most acknowledgement Hunting Ground has ever gotten so far is that I guess they made her Fiona costume in Street Fighter V.
But we're not necessarily talking about Haunted Ground though. Honestly, because that's like a different little ball game, considering yeah, same concept though, but no, different IP on my head, you know.
Hmm.
But well, let's see. The thing with Capcom though, like they could definitely pull it off though, because the two elements that Clock Tower is like exploration and the stalkers, right? The two things Capcom has done obviously really well in the recent Resident Evil games is your pursuer or stalker and exploration.
Yeah.
So they got those those two components down. Just everything else around it, is going to be a problem.
I
Yeah, I
think
feel like there's been
okay.
so much time since the last Clock Tower came out that Capcom's probably learned a lot, had a lot of successes with other games that if they were to revisit it, they could probably do it a lot better.
I think
Yeah.
probably, but I think the painful irony is that maybe the best way to return to Clock Tower is to do it, but not call it Clock Tower, and
So
just call it
do another
call
Haunted
it something
Ground.
new. A bit
So
like what Haunted
basically,
Ground
like
did.
do a reboot of it.
If yeah, I mean, you could maybe just call it like just straight Clock Tower and just start a fresh sort of thing because it's been so long, and I think you could probably get away with that. All right,
Yeah.
this would be confusing because it mean you'd have 3 Clock Tower ones now, so that's not going to be confusing at all. It's either that or it's like Clock Tower in all fashions, but you just call it something new and you just kind of go with that and like say, this is basically, this is our reimagining of Clock Tower from way back, but like it's been so long, it's kind of difficult to call it Clock Tower 4 because it's been 15 years. So just call it something brand new, and I think people would understand that.
Call it New
Um,
Tower.
God,
Clock
Tower.
works.
Old Tower. There you go.
Clock works. Let's go.
Works.
Plot works. I think it already. Oh no, I'm thinking
Alarm clock tower.
Clock blockers.
The clock tower. Ah, there's an idea. But I think that's the way you do it. Like, it's a difficult concept to pull, anyways. I think there's definitely ways that you could play around with it and hit. I don't think you can ever do it and expect it to like start breaking charts or anything like that. But like with some care and attention, I think it could be a very nice, attractive experience for purists. Those kind of seeking a bit more of a not a railroaded sort of experience. I think nothing like that, but like I think something a bit more story driven, a little bit less about like the gameplay, but again, much more about like kind of exploration and kind of, you know, putting yourself into the kind of the area around and kind of going with that. If that's the sort of experience you want, then I think a reimagined version of it could definitely satisfy some taste there.
All right, I think we can move on to the final question, which is ranking all of the games.
Clearly the best one is Ghost Heads, right, Shadow?
Fuck no.
I refuse to dignify this with a response.
Yeah. Well, Haunted Ground's the best one.
I think I'll know fully when I've finished with Clock Tower 3, but my assertion of the series is it was kind of a novel idea they played around with the first game, and it was like it was okay if you're willing to kind of meander about a bit. They kind of got wacky as they went along and actually introduced, I think, a kind of an entertaining experience. Completely lost all sense of focus of what the hell they were doing with Struggle Within. But you know, ultimately, once Capcom got on the hands of it, they're like, we'll make a a decent enough experience. And I think that the series finished, if you'll call it that, on a reasonably decent note. But man, was it up and down on the way. Holy God. I mean, that's the only thing I would say there. So, meanwhile, the chat is continuing to find names to call the new clock tower.
Clock, stopwatch, timer, Quicksilver.
Tower clocker. I mean, you're
Tower
all
clocker.
You're all terrible people.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do my ranking like really quickly because I did post it on Twitter. So, Haunting is gonna be like from best to worst. So, Haunting Ground number 1, Clock Tower 3 number 2, Clock Tower 2 in Japan is the actual number 3. Then it is Clock Tower: The First Fear, and then the final one, which is the worst game in the series, Clock Tower Ghost Head, because it's the only answer at this rate.
It's worst ever. Like, it has to be, right? It's got to be like top 10 all time.
Yep.
Like forgotten horrors.
Forgotten horrors. I love that.
Damn.
Like I will say that I am very much looking forward to Haunting Ground. Like, a few people have told on my channel have spoke about it, and like even with the Clock Tower 3, like as I'm going through it, I was quietly interested in getting involved with it. Haunting Ground, I've heard, you know, like it's kind of a culty sort of game. Like is I've heard is a pretty solid experience. So I am definitely looking forward to giving that a spin.
Yeah, it's definitely a cult following because Capcom really cannibalized that game because they released it in the same year as Devil May Cry 3 and Resident Evil 4, and
Yeah,
it was very good to Resident Evil 4.
That's insane, isn't it? To think they released 3 games in the same year. Like
Well,
that.
I mean,
Well, on top of that too, though, they also had limited copies as well. So that's they pretty much created this rarity problem here.
Yeah, it is absolutely
yeah, I
insane.
think it isn't uncommon for Capcom to send games out to die. I mean, like all of Clover Studios games.
Well, that's a different little story there, though. But no, that's not part of the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I hope that, like, I'm hoping I can probably put Haunting Ground towards the top end of like the series. And be fair, that it should do. There's some low bars in this series that has to be cleared. So, but from what I've seen, it looks to be a decent enough experience. And hey, you get to be friends with a dog, so that's got to be some points, right? Who doesn't want to do that in a video game? Like, people will spend like hours and money with pixelized sheep and giving them particular color coatings of fur. So, like, what the fuck? That's why I look at it. God almighty.
Anyone else? On
No,
listen?
I'm pretty good.
I'll speak down.
No, I gave my rank.
Matthew?
I'm still working through them, but I'll honestly say that Haunting Ground is my favorite. Just by watching, and with my playthrough of the first Clock Tower, Haunting Grounds is going to be my favorite. The least of my favorite is obviously Ghost Head. There's no changing that. I'm sorry, there's no redemption for that game.
No, I mean there isn't. It is a game that needs to be consigned to the annals of just horror and misery, and there it shall remain for the betterment of mankind.
I almost thought you said throw that game in the devil's anus, and I was about to laugh so hard if you did.
I don't know where you.
Yeah,
this is not Thor Ragnarok. You need to relax.
So I
would.
wonder. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I would even like recommend playing through Remothered and Nightcry before touching Clock Tower Ghost Head.
Oh.
Oh well.
Yeah.
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 Honestly, would it qualify for the most expensive shitty game ever made?
Probably so.
And if you developed highly damaging neurological symptoms as a result of playing through these various games, please dial.
I say please die.
I think
honestly,
that might be a better fight.
For how much it's worth, you might as well just buy Haunting Ground over Clock Tower 2.
Yeah, it's actually cheaper too, in my head.
I agree. Like, if that copy is going for like $450, you might as well just freaking just
spend on a better game.
You
Who's gonna
know,
buy it for $450 is my question.
I mean, you could do so many. I mean,
Collector's item.
You go on a cheap holiday for that. You get a nice meal. You know,
I bought a PS5 for that much.
Yeah,
Oh.
if you're lucky.
Yeah, I am lucky. Oh shit, hit my mic. Goddamn.
Yeah, smack that mic.
All right, do it again.
No.
And on that bombshell,
Yeah.
Literally.
On that bombshell, I think we can sign out for the last podcast of the year.
Yeah. All right.
Yay.
Rip.
Any more questions you guys want to ask or anything like that?
nah, I think we've gone through pretty well, and we've adequately.
I was gonna add on.
Go on.
I was gonna add on. You think a good idea would be for Capcom to try to release the two games? I know they re-released Haunting Ground in Japan.
Well, I'm not sure. Oh, yes, they released it in Japan, but I'm not sure if they can actually do anything with 3 because technically they don't own it. They developed 3, but they don't own the IP rights to it. So I don't think.
Yeah, I think they abandoned the trademark.
No, it wasn't theirs to begin with.
They worked with Sunsoft, I think.
Yeah, they worked with Sunsoft though, but it's not. Again, it's not their property.
So, but I think that makes sense. And hey, like if we suddenly, if a Lotus Expert comes out and suddenly there's this bizarre looking trailer, like, oh, this looks all right, and suddenly it says Haunted Ground 2, that would pique some interest.
It would be cool, but I asked the question. I'm like, I don't even know if Capcom still cares outside of the Street Fighter 5 costume.
Acknowledged it. Yeah, they acknowledged the costume. Oh my.
That's the only time.
But I'm not sure they made a statement saying like, no, we know if you guys love it, we're not going to plan releases or anything like that, right? People want it remastered though, but yeah.
Oh, they bought out Dino Crisis first beforehand.
Yeah. I'm sad too though, because I mean, like, come on.
Yeah.
You see that costume? Give us more of that.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to point out that there is a manga version of the first Clock Tower game. I mean, there's only a couple pages of it because I don't think they ever finished it, but it is available out on the internet if anyone wants to look it up.
Huh.
It's pretty interesting.
I'll burn the pages later.
Yeah,
I
throw
heard
some
that.
links.
What? Anything. All right. I guess that's it, right? Good. Going once, going twice. All right, fine. Fuck off. I mean, I'm just kidding. All right. Let's start with outros. Who'll start with? Any, meeny, miny, shadow.
Yeah, as I expected. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Black Show 993. As I said, we are currently going through the Clock Tower series and probably soon be Haunted Ground, because if I don't, then probably get persecuted by my community. Also available on Twitch as well. Black_Shadow_993.
With a rock in the middle.
With a rock in the middle. God damn you.
All right. Drill bit. Outro now.
Right. You could find the Twitter at drillbit777. That's the only place I'm really active in.
Oh no. Anyway, Matthew, I'm Rose. Teresa.
All right, you guys, thanks again for popping in on this podcast. You can find me on Twitch under Manthy Rose and on Twitter with Manthy_Rose.
All right. Scared sheep. Teresa.
Just want to say thank you guys for having me. I am Scared Sheep, and I hope to see you guys again sometime soon.
All right. And last but not least, you can find Renegade Operative.
I'm here. Go have
Go
sex
ahead,
with a
Andre.
fish and outro me.
Burn.
Okay, that's got to be highlighted.
I say we just finish here. See you guys later.
Yeah.
That's gonna be highlighted. Sorry.
Hey, Ray, go ahead, outro. You said.
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter at RentOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative, and you can find me on Twitch at Renegade_Operative, where I will be probably working on IES stuff and trying to get these podcasts up before we hit the new year. So look forward to that on the Infinite Ammo Syndicate.
Impossible,
trying.
questionable content with aquatic creatures.
Yes, very much. Aquatic life, leeches, eels.
I guess you like
equal
seafood.
opportunities.
If you
Equal
like
opportunities.
seafood.
Yeah, no mean to it. And okay. So last but not least, though, you can find me on Twitter at MotorBrandle, which is Sir Brandle. I'm tired of shit, and everything else is now your goddamn business. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Avoid clock tower, stay out of mansions, where you can get raid, regardless who you are, and yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
Ta-tas, everyone.
Like,
Happy New Year.
Fuck New Year's.
so
Okay, every year.
Renegade.